welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I apologize for the hiatus between vacation and some everyday life things. Things just got in the way, but I'm back now, and in return for the patience, I'm going to do a little bit longer of an episode this time. This is going to be a live response Q&A. I submitted a post on Instagram with a question poll asking you guys to submit questions that I can answer and hopefully provide some value to you. So I've got 32 questions here. I have not read through any of them, so all of the responses will be in real time, non-premeditated. Hopefully they're valuable. I also don't know if all of them are worth answering. So if you submitted one and I decide against it, I apologize. It's either because I'm uneducated on the topic, or sometimes people just straight up ask out-of-pocket questions that I'm not comfortable answering. So the sake of today's episode is going to be pure Q&A with 32 questions I have here on my phone. If you submitted, thank you for submitting. And if you're here, drop a comment and let me know if I answered your question. Before I get into the podcast, I do want to quickly say I have a community, the HigherUp Lifestyle. The link will be in the YouTube description if you're interested in joining. It costs about as much as a Starbucks cup of coffee per month, and it's a really positive, encouraging place for accountability, posting your wins, and meeting like-minded people. I also post exclusive content in there that's just for the community members. We're 160 people strong, and I'd love to see you there. So let's dive into the questions. These are simply in the order that they've been submitted. The first one is, it's ironic, how big do you want to see the community that you want to build? This is a fantastic question that I've given a lot of thought, and I'm assuming you're asking me about the school community that I just alluded to. Genuinely, I want to see it much bigger than me and myself. I want it to get to the point where it's autonomous. It's no longer about me. It's simply a place to positively interact with like-minded people, as I alluded to earlier. I want it to be, 1,000, 2,000 people strong. I'd love to see that. And it's why I made it $7 a month. I didn't want to provide some high ticket, closed down community. I genuinely wanted to create a place where people could be around people they wanted to be around, because sometimes in your everyday life, it's hard to find people who care about steps, protein goal, self-development, mindset improvement. That's a relatively niche group of people. And I, in my personal life, have seen a tremendous amount of value from joining the running clubs that I have joined in the metro Atlanta area. Something about being around people makes training easier. You get ideas. You just feed off of that energy. We're really tribal creatures. And I thought not everybody has that same access to opportunity that I'm lucky enough to have with the run clubs. So why not create something digitally? And so far, so good. It's been incredibly fulfilling to see what is going on in the community. People posting when they need motivation or accountability. They get very vulnerable in there with some of the posts, and it's been nothing but positivity, encouragement, and constructive feedback. So I want the concept of higher up wellness, or the higher up lifestyle, to become more of an idea and a set of principles than just about me, Michael. I want to eventually be able to step back and just know that people can follow a protocol that's a hodgepodge of recommendations and thoughts from people a lot smarter than me. And I was just fortunate enough to create a centralized place for people to learn it, live it, and embody it in their everyday lives. So that's a long-winded way of saying I'd love to see 2,000 people in there in the next couple of years. That would be incredible, and I would love to be able to hang my hat on an achievement like that, knowing that I gave people a place to do just that. Hopefully that answers your question, Christian. Thank you for submitting. Question number 2, how to stop binging. I get this question a lot, and Kyler, thank you for submitting. I have made content around it, but of course, not everybody sees every single video. And if the camera shakes, I apologize. My 80-pound dog is currently moving around on the floor below me. I'm in a little bit different of a place, by the way, if you can't tell. I'm in my house in the shared office that Sarah and I use. She's over here on her computer working right now. Actually thought the set looked pretty good between the HigherUp logo, and this is a picture Sarah had framed for me. That's a little letter I wrote to myself. I'll maybe talk more about that in a different episode. It has to do with keeping promises to yourself. But I've made a lot of content around binge eating, and it's something I seriously struggled with when I was obsessively calorie tracking and I was incessantly lean. When you're very lean, your ghrelin and your leptin, your hunger hormones, get way out of whack. Your body doesn't want to be shredded. It wants to keep you alive. So it will trigger ghrelin releases to make you hungry. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone, leptin is the satiety hormone. And so not only did I have low body fat fighting against me, but I found, for me personally, this isn't everybody's experience, the more rules that I created around what I could and could not have, and the more tracking I did, the more I was over consuming or binging. So I handle this a few different ways. One is a mindset piece, and one is actually a practical tip that you can implement. The first one would be, if you're tracking diligently and almost over stringently, give yourself a break. Just focus on feeding and nourishing your body and brain with real whole foods. If you're eating enough protein, you're eating nutrient-dense whole foods, a lot of times your appetite will naturally self-regulate. I found as a guy with a big appetite, it was very hard for me to bulk on this past winter gaining phase because I was eating 95% whole foods. It's just really hard to overeat meat, potatoes, fruits, vegetables. And that was one thing that worked for me was I stopped trying to fit a bunch of junk food into my calorie window and saying, well, I hit my protein, now I can have 600 calories worth of Oreos. The problem is the Oreos, the 600 calories of Oreos may have given me the caloric energy, but it didn't satiate me. It didn't satisfy me. So if it fits your macros, that approach really didn't work for me. It's simply stick to food that grew in the ground, grew on a tree, or had a mom and dad. And if I want a cheeseburger or I want Oreos every once in a while, I'll have it. But I found when I just said I'm going to feed my body in the way I know I feel the best, I started to naturally gravitate towards those foods. Of course, knowing how to prepare them in a tasty way is important. That's why we have YouTube University. So learn how to cook is another piece of this. The last thing is around your mindset about binging. People overconsume and they'll say, well, I binge ate today, or I went overboard on this meal. I may as well say fuck it and throw the whole day out the window or binge for the whole weekend. And then they undo 2 weeks of cutting progress that they made. To a degree, we curate the reality that we live in, and words give things a ton of power. And when I would call attention to an overconsumption period on a meal and call it a binge, I immediately associated that with a negative or regression in my self-worth or progress. So I simply stopped using the term binge eating. In my reality, I don't believe I can binge eat. I don't believe it's possible for me to do that. And that may sound silly or delusional or like I'm gaslighting myself, and that's kind of the point. The point is, words have power and they have meaning. And if you can take the power and the meaning out of something like binge eating and just not call it that and say, in my brain, this is impossible. On the days I do end up over consuming a little bit, which since I adopted this is far less, I stopped feeling the guilt, which is the biggest problem I had. That was what was really forcing me to regress and making it harder to get back on track, was saying that I binged. And now if I overconsume, it's just, well, I had a little bit more food today, or I had a little bit more junk food today. And I started to be more aware of how it made me feel physically than how it made me feel emotionally. And when I realized how I felt physically, the opportunity cost of eating that food became a lot less appealing. At the end of the day, we are, as far as we know, the only sentient beings aware of our mortality on the earth, and we're letting a pint of Ben and Jerry's dictate our emotional state. Think about how silly that is when you really break it down to its essence. Stop giving inanimate objects like food that much power over your mental and emotional stability. And if you can start to talk to yourself this way, the self-talk that we have, our internal dialogue, is something I preach about a lot because I believe thoughts become things. And like Joe Dispenza says, neurons that fire together wire together. If you want to reshape your perspective around certain topics like a binge eating or over consuming food, or whether foods are good or bad, it's another thing I don't believe in. You have to start with your internal self-talk, and that will create the reality around you. We perceive the world that we articulate in our own head. Hopefully that answers your question. This is definitely going to be a long episode. Question number 3. How do you adequately balance running and weightlifting to maximize progress in both? Fantastic question. I don't think I have the process mastered, but I think I definitely have made strides in making it a comfortable and enjoyable progression. Right now I'm training to run a sub 520 marathon, shooting for 515 because I want to be a part of a relay mile world record attempt. Very scary, never come close to that pace. Nonetheless, I'm training for it. So I'm putting down 15 to 25 miles a week and I'm weightlifting. The first thing I'll say is lean into YouTube content. Nick Bear has a lot of content about how he balances the two. And I learned a lot from Nick Bear. If you don't know who that is, CEO of BPN, Bear Performance Nutrition, probably the first guy to coin the term hybrid athlete, honestly, and the reason I got into running. So it is possible to make great strides in both as a natural lifter, but you have to manage training volume, both on your running and your lifting, and recovery becomes even more important when you add a stimulus that's as tough on the body as distance running is. So you have to be mindful even more so of food quality, not just quantity, quality. Vitamins and minerals become essential when you're running because you're losing a lot more water. You're excreting through sweat your salt, your potassium, your magnesium, all of these essential minerals. So eating nutrient-dense foods helped my recovery greatly. I swapped chicken for more red meat. I started eating more fruit, whole eggs and not egg whites, focusing on foods that had a ton of vitamins and minerals, so micros, as well as protein, carbs, and fats, macros. So focus on food quality and quantity. Quantity being making sure you're eating enough to support that training load, because it's a big strain on the body to run 20 miles a week and weightlift a few times a week, especially if you're pushing for progress and overload in both situations. For me, the training split that works the best when I'm on a serious running prep is a 3-day full body split on a higher intensity, lower volume approach. I found when I was doing high volume gym sessions, especially on my lower body, running was just, it wasn't happening. So instead of doing 5 or 6 moderately intense sets, I'll do 2 or 3 very intense sets close to or at failure. And that lack of volume helps a lot with me performing in the running window, but it still allows me to make strength gains. There's some research coming out that low volume, higher intensity training might actually be superior for natural lifters. I've really liked my progress since implementing it, and it's made running a lot easier. So if you're on a bro split doing 14 to 16 sets per workout, first off, how hard are you really training if you can do 14 sets of anything? Is that even productive? If you push yourself hard, the most you should be able to do on a muscle group is 5 sets to failure. So for me, 3-day full body split and being diligent with an actual program, having a plan, structured overload week over week for both the weights and the running did it for me. And then, of course, it's just time on task over time. You have to get better at it. If this is a new thing for you, you're just not in that kind of shape yet. Your body will become more durable, it will respond accordingly, and it will get easier. So make sure you're eating the right nutrient dense foods. I'll add, make sure you're prioritizing deep quality sleep, 6 to 8 hours, 7 to 9 preferably, and make sure your training volume makes sense for whatever your goals are. Hopefully that answers your question. Question number 4, I think. Opinion on GLP-1 for weight loss. I don't know what that is, so I'm not qualified to answer that. I'm assuming that's something like a peptide or Ozempic or some shit. Not a fan. Kaylee asks, do you ever go into the gym and not know what you're going to do that day? No. As I alluded to in the previous question about balancing training load, you have to have a plan. Now, if you're just starting out and you're just trying to build the foundation and the habits of getting in the gym, fine. Go in there, do a couple machines, get sweaty, get your heart rate up, and leave. That'll make a ton of progress right at the beginning of the gym journey for you, because that you go from doing absolutely nothing to doing a little bit of something. And that's a stimulus. Stimulus creates change. However, if you want to make a dramatic impact on your physique, you have to be in a focused training program. You have to do the same few key movements for the same muscle groups week over week and get stronger at them either through reps or added resistance or weight over time. It's called the principle of progressive overload. It's what drives muscle growth. A stronger muscle is going to be a bigger muscle most of the time. Now, have I gone to the gym before and just thought, you know what? It's Saturday. I feel like just catching a pump, or I feel like doing a HIIT workout. Every once in a while, yes. Or this weekend in Texas for the EchoVision meetup that I'm heading to, I'll probably catch a workout with some of the EchoVision guys, and it's probably not going to be what's scheduled on my program. But the point is, I'm in there, I'm training, I'm having fun with it. Above all, compliance is the science. You're going to see the best results in the training program that you can stick with long term, whatever that looks like for you. And sometimes compliance means going off plan and just having fun with the workout. But 90% of the time, I walk into the gym knowing exactly what I'm going to do and knowing that I did it last week and I'm going to try to do it a little bit better through weight or reps that week. That's simple. Follow a basic training program. I have a bunch posted on my page and they're all over the internet for free. So I definitely recommend having a program that forces you to get stronger over time if you want to see real progress in your physique. Thanks for the submission, Kaylee. Bullman asks, how do you deal with injury? I've been very fortunate, knock on wood, to not have any major setbacks physically lately. When you run and lift a lot, you have things that are a little bit aggravated or will talk to you occasionally. You know, my knee and my elbow kind of go in phases or seasons and have moods. But when it comes to real injuries, like when I took a nasty spill on a dirt bike a couple of years ago and partially tore my labrum, I had to work around that. And I was basically just focusing on what I could do rather than what I couldn't do. Again, there's a little bit of mindset in there. When you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And it's easy to focus on the problem, but that makes the problem grow. So when I hurt my shoulder, I knew I couldn't press over my head or away from my chest, but I could do back movements, I could do lower body movements, and I could walk. Running hurt my shoulder for whatever reason. But I just simply focused on what I could do without pain. Is that ideal? No, but it's a whole lot better than sulking in the injury and not doing anything. So if you have a banged up leg and all you can train is upper body, fine, do that. If you have a banged up shoulder and all you can train is lower body and walk, do that. You have to find different ways to make forward progress. Even if it's 50% of the progress you would have made, that's still 50% progress over the course of 6 months or a year. And that would put you tremendously ahead of where you were at the time of the injury. So all I simply do is focus on what I can control and what I can train and adapt my modality accordingly. It's really simple. Ryan Lambert, do you think it is unhealthy to do more cardio on days you know you will be eating more? I believe when you say unhealthy, you mean is it creating an unhealthy relationship with food? And I think that comes down to perspective yet again. I talk about perspective a lot. I think it's very important if you can't tell. So it really depends. There were days where I would immediately know I was going out that night or having a big meal out or drinking alcohol, and I would over exercise because I thought that would help me feel like I earned it or like I deserved it. But now, even so, if I have a big day coming up, I'll maybe add a few extra thousand steps. I'll just create a little bit of a buffer, and I don't view it as I can't have this fun if I don't over exercise. I simply say, I want to create a little bit of a buffer for myself because I feel more comfortable if I front load activity into my day on a night I'm having some cocktails or having a meal that's off plan for me. So it really comes down to how you view it. The way I view it, I don't think is unhealthy. But feeling like you constantly have to earn every bite of food, yeah, that is when you may delve down the rabbit hole of disordered eating or a poor relationship with food. I don't even like calling it a relationship with food. I call it a perspective on my nutrition because again, relationship gives food power. You have relationships with people, you don't have relationships with food. So it really depends, man. I know that's an ambiguous answer. I hope it was somewhat helpful. But if you're spiraling and doing cardio in a panic or out of anxiety, it might be time to reassess. Anna Darcini asks, do you have a suggestion for how to increase my 5K speed to under 10 minutes? I'm going to assume you mean under 10 minutes per mile, because if you were running a 5K in under 10 minutes, well, you simply wouldn't be human. You would probably be a fucking cheetah. So 10-minute miles, I'm going to assume is what you mean. You want to run a 5K in under 30 minutes total. 5K is 3.2 miles, 3.1 miles for those of you who don't know. Maybe I don't know. So yes, the easiest way I can recommend this without getting very long-winded is one, you can look up 5K speed increase programs or how to increase my 5K time on YouTube. YouTube University is the best thing to happen in the world. I think you can learn anything for free. What I would do is 3 runs a week at your pace. You're relatively a beginner to running at 10-minute miles. 3 runs a week, 2 easy runs, 1 harder run. Easier runs would be zone 2 cardio. Take your age, subtract 180 from your age. That's the heart rate you want to stay at or below, preferably 10 beats below that, on your easy runs. It's a conversational pace that you can maintain nasal breathing from. Most people go out and they run and they just go too hard and they never make progress. They actually regress. So have 2 easy runs a week that are a little bit longer, maybe 20 to 45 or even 60 minutes, and then have one shorter speed workout. So one way that I got faster in prep for my marathon was mile repeats. It consisted of, on marathon prep, a mile warm up, followed by 1 mile at threshold pace, meaning a much higher heart rate, 170 to 180. And for me, that pace was around 7:15, 7 minutes. I would hold that pace for 1 mile and then take a full rest for about 2.5 minutes, and then repeat that for 3 miles, and then do a cool down mile. But for a 5K, you might do a warm up mile, 2 miles on mile repeat pace at threshold, and then 1 mile cool down. So it'd be a 4 mile run in total. And that's how you would get faster. So you have the 2 runs to build your aerobic base, to get you in better shape, to be used to running on your feet for longer periods. And then you have something that actually increases your conditioning on the speed side. They're two different energy pathways, and they feel very different. So 2 zone 2s and 1 speed workout, and increase the intensity of the speed workout as you get in better shape. I started at 730 from a mile repeats, and by the time I had done 6 or 7 of them, I was doing 640s. So that's progressive overload, just like the gym, but it's in the running program. You have to overload everywhere. Thank you for the submission, Anna. Worrisome Ant. How to get over feeling guilty about wanting to make more money. I don't know if I'm qualified to speak on that. I don't know if I've ever made content about that, but the only thing I'll say is you should never feel bad for wanting better for yourself. I can't imagine a world where I would feel guilty about wanting to make more money. I'm not sure I understand the question. I know there's a character limit, so you probably could have given me context that Instagram prevented you from. But dude, I'll just say if you want to be above average, that's the last thing you should feel bad about on the planet. Go for it. Make more money. Be successful. The bar for being average is so low nowadays that people will often shame you or project onto you the life that they hate when you try to do better. Maybe that's what you're dealing with. They're miserable human beings. They're projecting. Do you and do the best you can. Bev's book rants. Can you burn enough calories to be in a deficit only doing zone 2 at highest level reached? Not sure I understand the question, Bev. If you're watching this, maybe you can DM me and I can give you a more detailed answer if you can give me a more detailed question. But the thing that creates a caloric deficit is simply burning more calories than you consume on a given day. You can do that through activity. You can do that strictly through monitoring caloric intake tightly. As your activity goes up, your burn will go up as well. So you can eat more calories and be in a deficit. I like to move a lot when I'm cutting because I can cut on more calories. So hopefully that was a little bit helpful. Lee Boy Magic asks, what things helped you change your relationship with food other than self-talk? I don't want to be a broken record, so I'll say refer back to my answer about how to stop binge eating because it'll be the same words, and I don't want to chew up another 10 minutes talking about it because I definitely could. Persevere or pivot when you fall out of love with a business you started. This is a good question. I've been dealing with a little bit of burnout recently in the business and the content and putting things off I shouldn't. And I heard Chris Williamson talk about on his podcast how he dealt with the same problem and he feels it's from not celebrating your wins and your milestones and keeping that head down grind mentality. What it actually does is just leads to burnout and you hating what you loved in the first place. So, my advice and something I'm trying to implement now, which seems to be helping, is celebrating all the wins, even the little ones, as many celebrations of wins as you can get, no matter how big or small. I didn't really celebrate when I broke these follower thresholds that I never thought would be possible on social media. I did celebrate when I had a big month in my business income wise, and that felt good and that gave me a lot of fire to move forward. So celebrate wins, celebrate them with your loved ones, share them with your friends and family, and relish in it. Take a moment to appreciate what you've achieved because though it may sound a little bit counterintuitive, it celebrating the achievement and slowing down will make you want to speed up and keep going for that next thing because that'll give you that next dopamine hit of another win. So celebrate them all. Valley Girl asks, is building a woman's physique different from building a man's physique or is it the same? Wow, I love this question and not enough people ask it. This is going to be both opinion and science based. The short answer is yes, they're the same. The same rules apply. Progressive overload in the gym, follow a structured program, eat enough protein, sleep enough, eat real whole food that's dense in vitamins, minerals, and macronutrients, protein, carbs, and fats. However, women want to prioritize and highlight certain parts of their physique. What makes up the feminine physique protocols in bodybuilding is, the delts and the glutes, and the back. So, yeah, if you're going to do a women's training program, you may want to pick a program that puts a little bit more intensity or weekly volume on those body parts, but the rules are the same. So, I'm not going to do hip thrusts, but you might want to do hip thrusts. That's fine. Simply make sure you progressively overload them. All the rules and principles are identical. It's just about where you want to aim them to build the physique that you want to that looks feminine. Carl Anderson asks, what are the effects of marijuana on the body and fitness, if any? I'm not well versed on the research. What I do know is that Dr. Matthew Walker, pretty much the leading researcher in sleep studies. He's a professor at Cal Berkeley. He wrote a book called Why We Sleep. Highly recommend it. It's fascinating stuff. Sleep is monumentally important. And he alluded to on his Joe Rogan episode that they found that when subjects consume THC less than 2 hours prior to bed, that it did in fact suppress REM sleep quite severely, actually. It can reduce REM sleep, I think, by up to 35 or 40% when consumed very close to bed. So if you're going to consume it, give yourself a few hours for it to sort of wear off. Don't go to bed absolutely blitzed because you'll be more sedated than you are resting. Same principle with alcohol. You're not sleeping when you have the nightcap. You are sedated when you have that alcohol before bed. As far as overall fitness, assuming your lungs aren't burning, if I don't know what your vehicle of ingestion is, but I'm assuming it's inhalation. If your lungs are burning, maybe cut down on it. But I'm not familiar with any research that indicates a decrease in performance. In fact, I know there are some prominent athletes that use edible THC in recovery modalities because it calms them down, helps them sort of relax, relieves pain. But that's about as qualified as I am to speak on that. Michelle asked about, is brown rice a fake health food? What are our best options when it comes to rice? I actually feel unusually passionate about this topic because brown rice falls into that you have to eat this, not that bullshit, that whole narrative. And people saying brown rice is better than white rice. Okay, well, calling any food inherently better than its counterpart or cousin is ridiculous. It's stupid. I don't know how this got started, but brown rice is not inherently any better for you than white rice. And some people would actually argue that brown rice is worse because the shell, it's just effectively white rice that still has its husk. So there's a little bit of fiber. But there's actually a small amount of arsenic in the brown rice husk, which can cause gut irritation to some people. Arsenic is a poison, for those of you who don't know. No, you're not going to die if you have brown rice. It's a microscopic amount. But I bloat when I eat brown rice, and I hate the way it tastes. I think it tastes like dirt. And a lot of people are eating it because they think it's better than white rice. It's not. So if you want to have the white rice, have the white rice. What are our best options when it comes to rice was the second part of that question. Now you know. White, Thai jasmine, sushi, all of those white rices that have no fiber are totally fine. Just be aware of the fact that rice is very calorically dense. And for me, it's very easy to overeat. So I have to be careful with that. Otherwise, I love eating it. It supports my performance. It's easy carbohydrates before workouts. And I'm a huge fan of it. It's a whole food. Anthony Lupi asks, how to get past a plateau or methods of improving gut health. All right, those are two totally different questions. So I'll try to answer them both. Training plateau in the gym, the method I've used in the past, we'll create a hypothetical example. Let's say you're stuck at, for easy math, a 100-pound bench press for 5 reps, and you have been trying for 3 or 4 weeks, and you simply can't do more than 100 for 5 in that top set. What I've done is I've decreased the weight by about 15%. So for 100 pounds, that would be 85 pounds, 15 pounds less. And I will work at a higher rep range for a couple of workouts. So if I'm stuck at 100 for 5, I might drop to 85 and do a few sets of 7 to 9 reps and feel really comfortable with that and strong with that and still train with high intensity in that rep range. And then after 2 or 3 weeks of training at a reduced weight, but reduced load, but a higher volume, I will up the weight again to 100 pounds. And I have found in the past that it helps me push past a plateau. Second thing I'll say is if you've been doing a movement repeatedly for 3 to 6 months, maybe it's time to switch up to something similar. So if it's barbell flat bench you're stuck on, maybe swap over to dumbbell flat bench and start progressing on that movement instead. And that's how I break through a plateau. Tips for improving gut health. Simple. I would include minerals and electrolytes in your water. I would drink filtered water. And I would make sure you're getting enough fiber. Generally, the rule of thumb is 10 grams per 1,000 calories consumed. And include fermented foods. For me, what irritates my gut heavily is seed oils and processed sugar. So those exist in tandem in all processed foods. And I know my gut health is bad because when I eat more of those, I bloat, my stomach hurts, and my skin goes to shit. Complete shit. And our skin and our gut are inextricably linked. Like 95% of our skin health is a reflection of the integrity of our gut. The gut skin axis is very real. So when I limited the processed foods from a boxer bag, even if they were protein snacks, Quest chips, Quest bars, and just focused on real food, got enough fiber, and ate fermented foods such as Greek yogurt, kimchi, sauerkraut. Those are foods that have been fermented, kombucha, so they have live probiotics and bacteria that support gut health. Things got a lot better for me. Personal anecdote, I can't eat a lot of vegetables. My microbiome, for whatever reason, doesn't like it. It creates a lot of bloating and discomfort and gas for me. So when I limit vegetables, I tend to have better gut health as well and eat just fruits, meats, and eggs. So hopefully that's helpful, Anthony. Thanks for the submission, brother. What are my thoughts on blood flow restriction training? Life Through Shots submitted this question. Another one of those I don't know a lot about. I see people doing it. I've never tried it, and I've never researched it. So I cannot give you a valuable answer on that. I'd recommend defaulting to, you guessed it, YouTube University on that one. People like Jeff Nippard, Athlete X, they'll cite research on blood flow restriction training and if it's effective for hypertrophy. Quick water break there. Just Dext asked, do I have to bulk or cut to build muscle and stay lean even though I eat high protein daily? Loaded question. So, do you have to bulk to build muscle? Can you build muscle in a calorie deficit? Can you build muscle when you main gain or stay around calorie maintenance? The truth of the matter is, the best environment for building muscle is an energy surplus environment. How do you expand on a house or renovate a house without the raw materials? You need bricks, you need wood, you need nails, you need the hammer, the drill, you need the tools. The calories are the raw materials to expand on the square footage of your house, i.e., muscle tissue. So, yes, it is going to be the most conducive to build muscle in a caloric surplus. And you have to accept the fat gain. I know that's why you're asking me this question. I just know it. And as a former fat kid myself, I always struggled with that. I didn't want to get thicker because I was terrified to gain body fat. The fact of the matter is, I look at bulking and building a physique a lot like investing in your wealth for later in life. No one became a millionaire in a month, or, well, I'm sure somebody has. But the point is, you invest a little bit of money each month, and it hurts a little bit because you'd love to have that money in your checking account, but you're paying for future you. You're benefiting you tomorrow or you 10 years from now. And so you take a little bit of money out of your account and you invest it and you invest it, and it builds and it builds. And over time, you get to be older and you've got this nice little nest egg. Building a physique is the same way, and the bulk is how you invest. And now that you've done a successful cut, you obviously understand caloric intake. You know that you're armed with the knowledge to undo the fat gain of the bulk. For me, I can undo about 6 months of bulking fat gain in 7 weeks of fairly aggressive dieting. So when I get in my head about it or think I'm looking a little puffy, I remember to focus on different metrics. One, my workouts feel way better in the gym when I'm in a surplus. My energy is better, my sleep is better, my hormone health is better. And I focus on those metrics. Am I getting stronger? Do my workouts feel good? And instead of the aesthetic, I focus on the performance and I just shift mental gears. And when it comes back down to the cut, I'm focusing on aesthetics again. So, yeah, the bulk is going to be the best way to build muscle. The caveat here is if your training is awesome, perfect, you're taking care of protein intake, sleep, and you're hitting progressive overload. If you're a fairly inexperienced lifter, yeah, you can build muscle in a calorie deficit because it's a new stimulus. People get substantial great gains in the newbie gain phase in a caloric deficit where they burn fat and build muscle. But if you're 3 years into lifting, it's going to be a lot harder to do that. I can honestly say I main gained throughout the summer and I built muscle for sure because my training was absolutely dialed in. My protein was dialed in. I was hitting all the marks, but the progress would have still been a lot quicker had I eaten enough calories. So, yeah, commit to the bulk, man. Commit to the bulk. Simple JC, what are some meals you love to eat no matter cutting or bulking? My food does not change whether I cut or bulk. The amount of it is really what changes. So obviously, some of you know at this point I'm sponsored by Nutrition Solutions, fantastic meal prep company, and I eat that for probably 85% of my meals. And I was doing that before they sponsored me. I was hoeing myself out to them, telling them how much I love them, and I've been fortunate enough to be sponsored now. But I love eating those whether I'm bulking or cutting because it's easy. 50 grams of protein. I know the calories. It's right there on the label, and it's ready in 90 seconds. I ate those on my bulk. I'm eating them now on my cut. Code HU if you want to try the meal prep and save 15% on your first order. But when it comes to actually cooking, I'll always eat beef or chicken with rice and avocado. And I'll sprinkle raw honey, sriracha, and soy sauce over top of that. I know it sounds weird. Don't knock it. It's sort of like an Asian sweet heat sauce is what it tastes like. When I'm bulking, I'll just eat that. When I'm cutting, I'll eat that meal and I'll add a few big handfuls of lettuce, romaine lettuce, because that creates an increased volume of food. I look at meals when I'm cutting sometimes in bites. Like when I'm bulking, the 50 bite meal is fine because I have to eat 4,000 calories. But when I'm cutting on 2,600, I'd like the meal to be 100 bites. So adding that lettuce and adding bites to the meal through volume with 5 calories for 2 cups of lettuce makes the meal feel a lot bigger and a lot more satisfying. So I take the same meals and alter the composition, ingredients, or amounts. So for me, beef or chicken with rice, avocado, sweet and sour sriracha, honey, soy sauce. And then of course I'll randomly just crush 2 pounds of steak for dinner, whether I'm cutting or bulking, because I love eating that way. I love ribeyes. I love New York strips. I am a huge fan of red meat. So my meals really don't change that much. DZ Prod. Every time I hear your name, man, I think of Drake saying Wheezy produced it. Would you suggest I become my 2.0 version of myself before I change careers? I'm not, okay, I gotta be careful here. There's like that meme when someone says, or there's a meme that's like when you say, but I don't know though, when you give people life advice in case you ruin their whole life. My take on this is, make the change you want to change when you want to make it. Maybe changing your career is part of becoming the 2.0 version of yourself, or the 10.0 is the term that I use. And that's a continuous journey. You're never going to fully get there. You're always going to be chasing the next thing. This isn't necessarily me telling you what to do. This is just how I might view it in your shoes. But maybe that career change, if it's this much at the top of your mind, is part of the progression to a better version of yourself. In which case, make the leap, man. Do what makes you happy. A happier you will be a more progressed version of yourself. Hopefully that's helpful. Cody Paw 2 asks, should you train a body part if it's still pretty sore? Generally, yes. Also, maybe no. This is sort of a listen to your body situation, but not everyone is super in tune with it. If you're sore to the point where you can't fully extend your arm because your bicep is absolutely shredded, or your calves are horribly sore, you can't extend your foot, then maybe don't train it, and you've probably overtrained it. Soreness does not necessarily equal muscle growth. Soreness equals muscle damage, and that can actually negate muscle growth in some cases. So take a look at your training volume. You might be going too hard, man. But if you're feeling it, generally the rule of thumb is if you feel soreness to the touch or to the stretch, and it's 3 or 4 out of 10 discomfort, yeah, you can probably train it. Listen to your body. But if you're cripplingly sore, you might need to take a harder look at your training program altogether. The real Mara asks, do you do any form of meditation? If so, what does that practice look like to you? I talked about this a while back, that I heard someone talk about a guru talk about meditation when people say, how do I meditate? Well, you get into the present moment. Well, how do I get into the present moment? By being aware of the feeling, acutely aware of the feelings around you. Here in meditation, guided meditations, they'll say, feel your fingertips touching your hands, or feel your feet on the ground, feel your lungs filling with air. So they say to get in the present moment, you get out of your mind into your body. That's the only way you're truly in the present. So I practice this 2 ways. It's very hard for me, but in the morning I try to just do 5 minutes of staring at my ceiling, or sitting on the couch staring at the wall with no distractions, no emails, just 5 minutes, because that's pretty much all my brain can physically manage, of just breathing and letting my mind go wherever it may. But for me, if the way that makes sense to me is if meditation and present moment is all about out of the mind into the body, then physical training is my meditation, because it's the only thing I'm thinking about when I'm doing it. There are things that you should have in life that no matter what you have going on, that they're the only thing you're thinking about in that moment. And when I have a heavy bar on my back or in my hands, my only thought is don't fail. And the only thing I'm feeling is the contraction of the muscle tissue. So I'm out of my mind and I'm into my body. So I'm in the present moment. And it's part of why I've fallen in love with longer runs, because you get into this flow state at 45 to 60 minutes where you're just listening to the sound of your breath. I've even stopped using headphones. I can just hear my feet hitting the ground. I'm listening to my breathing. My mind's not, it's just quiet. So for me, it's 5 minutes of just breathing and letting my mind wander in the morning before I check my phone. Don't check your phone in the morning. You're more susceptible to bad news or good news. You're just more impressionable in the morning because of the brain waves that your brain is emitting right when we wake up. Real science. But for me, it's really physical training, man. And that's why I think physical training is so powerful at managing anxiety and depression for people. Coach Flo asks, when did you flip switch for you? Oh, I think there's some typos in here. When did you flip your switch mentally? How did you fight the urge to not go back to your old ways? I hit fuck it. That's a principle I heard from, I don't remember who said it, but if you're not ready to change, you haven't hit fuck it, is the abbreviation of the quote. And fuck it is a point where you hate where you are so much that you would rather endure the pain of change than the pain of staying the same. So the action potential for change, what creates change in essence, whether it's in your everyday life, in your habits, or we learn this in sales training, no pain, no sale. Pain is what drives change, a pain with the current state. And if the pain of staying the same is not greater than the pain of change, you won't change, because change is painful. It's uncomfortable because it's all new and it's learning, and you'll fail and you'll mess up. So I hit the point where I was uncomfortable staying the same, more so than I was building new habits. And now, even today, 9 years later, I know what that moment was like. I know where I was, what I was doing, and everything in this life is opportunity cost. So I give up comfort in the now for comfort in the later. Through physical training, I make myself uncomfortable now to feel comfortable later. So if you're not ready to change or you're reverting constantly back to your old ways, you haven't hit fuck it yet. So figure out a way to hit that. That may sound a little bit crass, but it's true. At least it's true for me. All right, let's see here. What do we got next? Benjamin Scott Harris. I probably shouldn't be reading y'all's full names on the podcast. I apologize. Those are your Instagram handles. They're for the internet to see. How do I handle maintaining posture with sitting down all day for a desk job? I love when people ask me different questions that are just unusual. Sarah and I talk about this a lot because we're chronic shaped like shrimp slouchers at our desks. She has a posture correcting brace that actually like pulls her chest and shoulders back. So if you want to have proper posture, you should pull the shoulder blades back and the chest out. But obviously, as we sit and we sit and we sit, you want to slouch. I follow a guy whose name escapes me right now, but he's an expert on posture. And one of the things he recommends, for those of you listening, you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. For those of you on YouTube, he scoots very far back from his desk, his seat, and he leans forward and sort of arches his back and puts the computer screen far away. So he's sitting sort of like this, and I can't do it because there's a wall behind me, but his seat is far back from the desk and he's leaning over the desk with a straight neutral spine, and he's looking out at his camera screen. So in reality, though it's on a different plane, his spine and his neck are relatively level. They're relatively neutral. So that's a good tip that I used a lot when I was working an office job. Also, a stand-up desk. This one here, this adjusts, as you can see, up and now back down. Get a stand-up desk or ask your business for a stand-up attachment. My office in my old 9 to 5 gave me one, and it just sat on top of my desk and I popped it up. So that's what I would do to manage posture, and also do things like rows, face pulls, and pull-ups to strengthen those muscles in the back that ultimately weaken as we sit and slouch. The everyday American lifestyle has made all of those posture muscles remarkably weak. So you got to train them, and your posture will inherently get better. Crystal Ray, do you still use optimized minerals? Debating on my second order or finding a cheaper option. Yes, I do use it, and I pay for it. Jordan and I are friends, but I'm not sponsored. He doesn't give it to me for free. I do objectively think it's probably the best comprehensive mineral supplement on the market. He's releasing an electrolyte it will be all the same stuff, I think, but higher in sodium and potassium. I'm excited to see what that is. But it is expensive. It's $55 a month if you follow the recommended serving sizes. I got my dad on it, and he does a half serving every day. You could also do that to stretch it out. It's still got a lot of your daily values in there at half a serving. But I do still use it every single morning, and I I don't have a lot of things I really ball out on or spend frivolously on, but my health is obviously one of them, more so now that it's part of my job. So yeah, I'll continue to use it. And I honestly haven't found an alternative that's better. But if budget is that much of a concern, you can just do the salt water, or you can buy a different electrolyte brand, not Liquid IV, ton of added sugar, not a good one, probably the worst one you could buy. But you can just use salt, or you can do salt and potassium powder and take a magnesium supplement. Now that's not going to cover all the niche minerals that Optimize has, the zinc, the selenium, the boron, all things that are really, really essential to our cellular function. But if you really have a balanced diet, you should be able to cover a fair amount of those bases. Kristen Harnett asks, I swear every TikTok ad right now is for digestive enzymes. All right, that's not a question, but I'm guessing you want my thought on that. Yeah, I see a lot of that too. Gut health is becoming mainstream, which I'm glad about. The truth is, similar to supplements for fat loss and muscle building, you don't need a single supplement to build a great body, get healthy, and feel good, but the right ones can help. And I use enzymes strategically. I do keep digestive enzymes in my cabinet. If I eat out or eat something that I didn't prepare and it's got a lot of just bullshit in it, I know I'm going to pay for that with some GI distress, and I have found enzymes to help. But I don't just take enzymes every day. I take them on an as needed basis. So I do think they're good. And if you're going to buy one, try to find one that's of a high quality, vet it, see if it's third party tested, check out the company. Some of these TikTok shop companies are just random people trying to stand up a business and make a quick buck, and they're selling dog shit. So be mindful of that. But enzymes can absolutely be helpful. So can probiotic supplements, but you can also get probiotics from real food, the Greek yogurt, kimchi, and sauerkraut that I mentioned earlier. Hopefully that's helpful. I do like enzymes, but not all the time. All right. Oh, Kristen, your follow-up question. You led with the question. I just read your answer first. How do you feel about digestive enzymes and probiotic, prebiotic supplements? Now you know. Get enough fiber through vegetables, tubers, and fruits, or Metamucil supplements, whatever, if you have to. And you can get probiotics through kimchi, kombucha, sauerkraut, and Greek yogurt, and have outstanding gut health and never put a supplement in your body. And now we're closing out with the last question. I cannot believe I'm doing this in under an hour. I'm kind of proud of myself. Let's hope it's a good one, Jared. How do you strengthen your just do it muscle? I struggle with consistency. What a fantastic question to end on. It's just pure chance that happened. I love that. I literally just went through these in chronological order, and that's the very last question right there. So, Jared, thank you for submitting this, man. I think that this is an important topic that plays into a lot of what I've already talked about, hitting fuck it in terms of building discipline. But the fact of the matter is, it comes down to the change thing I talked about earlier, the action potential. You have to want to be different more than you want to be where you are now. And in those moments where you want to do it the least is that's what you lean on. I remember what I was like 6 months ago. I can't go back there. I'm going to the gym. Mike Tyson said, achieving greatness is doing the thing you hate and doing it like you love it. So a lot of it comes down to self-talk. He would say, like, I love that I get to do this. Even though training was the last thing Tyson wanted to do, look at where I got him. He's fucking Mike Tyson, for God's sakes. So when I struggle with that, and I do, I think people assume that I just love to train all the time, and I never have days where I would rather be anywhere else in the world doing anything else, but I do it anyway. Couple things I'll expand on to close out the episode with this. I believe most people are just 50 to 100 instances of saying yes to the thing they don't want to do when they really want to say no. That's what stands between them and the person they say they want to become. Those moments when you least want to do the thing are when it is most important to do the thing. Those moments are where the discipline is built. And when it eventually that inertia and that momentum builds, it becomes easier and easier to say yes when you want to say no. There's a lot I could expand on here on this, but that is how you have to look at it. The next thing I'll say is a mindset component. Have to versus get to. It's not an obligation, it's an opportunity. A while back, I made a video about this topic, and someone commented, people don't appreciate the opportunity they have with an able body. I have multiple sclerosis, and I've lost the ability to go to the gym and run, and it's the one thing I wish I could do. So accept the fact that you're in an able body and you're blessed, and a lot of people would kill to be in that position. And that helps give me a fire. I don't have to go to the gym because it's my job. I get to go to the gym because I have an able body and I'm healthy and I have the opportunity to take care of myself, not the obligation. So try shifting your mindset, try shifting your internal dialogue and your self talk around this. And like you said, the just do it muscle, it is a muscle just like anything else that you train in the gym or your public speaking skills. You train it and it grows stronger and more resilient, and you don't have to lean on it quite as much. It becomes part of your routine, right? I say fitness should be like brushing your teeth or showering. You don't just have weeks where you don't feel like showering or don't feel like brushing your teeth. No, you just do it. There's no emotion tied to that decision-making process. And that's the last thing I'll say is the interesting parallel I've found in all the self-help and successful podcasts I've listened to of people who've done something great, whether it's built a huge business, become a pro bodybuilder, or win a pro card, or do something exceptional, is that they don't practice emotional decision making. They don't let emotional states dictate or guide what they need to do. They simply do what they must. It's like I talk about motivation a lot. If motivation was a person and you personified it, they would be flaky. There would be high highs and low lows. And if the personality or emotional state of motivation was a friend, you wouldn't stay friends with them for very long because they would be notoriously unreliable. And that's where you rely on discipline, and you build that discipline through saying yes when you want to say no. Hopefully that's helpful. There is no secret sauce. There is no magic pill. The magic pill that everyone seeks is simply taking action on the thing you say you want to do. Action creates confidence. Action and confidence create momentum. Action, confidence, and momentum over time create the discipline that you're seeking. That's the just do it muscle that's weak on you right now. But if you just keep going, and even on days you don't want to show up or don't have it, you do just a little bit to get 1% better, you'll strengthen that muscle. I hope that was helpful. Thank you for submitting such a great last question. And that'll wrap the episode now. So per usual, we'll close out with a step check. I'm not particularly proud of this one. It is 2:09 Eastern Standard Time, and I am at 3,575 steps. So needless to say, I have some work to do. Drop your step check in the comments, And if you're on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and drop a like on the video. It really does help me out. If you're on Spotify, feel free to give me the rating you feel I deserve. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning back in. Thank you for your patience. It isn't easy, but it is simple. Don't overcomplicate it.